Damn them all. That's what I whispered the night my family smiled, clinked glasses, and stabbed me in the back. I'm Olivia, the quiet one who restored an old house and trusted too easily. But trust me, by the end of this story, you'll know why the sweetest birthday gift I ever received was also my eviction notice. I never expected my 35th birthday to be anything more than a quiet afternoon filled with warm laughter, the scent of vanilla cake, and maybe a few too many hugs from my mother. But from the moment I opened my eyes that morning, something in my chest fluttered. Not quite anxiety, not quite joy. A soft hum of uncertainty. The sun filtered through the lace curtains of my bedroom, casting golden patterns on the floor. I sat up slowly, letting my bare feet touch the hardwood panels I had sanded and stained myself 3 summers ago. This house, my house, was more than timber and tiles. It was years of scraped knuckles, late-night paint fumes, and countless whispered dreams. I had saved it from falling apart, brick by brick, room by room. Willow Street had always been quiet in the mornings. A bird call, the distant sound of a mail truck, the creak of old branches shifting with the breeze. It was the kind of peace you don't realize you need until you have it. I stepped into the kitchen, inhaling the soft, sweet scent of cinnamon rolls baking in the oven. I'd been up since dawn preparing the small birthday gathering. Nothing extravagant, just family, familiar faces, safe hearts. I hummed under my breath while icing the cake, the frosting knife trembling ever so slightly in my hand. Why was I nervous? It wasn't my first time hosting. I'd thrown Easter brunches, Thanksgiving dinners, even my parents' 40th anniversary here last year. So why did today feel different? Maybe it was the look Ivy gave me yesterday when she dropped by with a bottle of wine, a smile too perfect, her eyes scanning the kitchen like it was hers. Or maybe it was the way my mom had avoided talking about the guest list last week. I shook it off. Don't overthink, Liv. It's just your birthday. By noon, the living room was softly humming with conversation. My brother Daniel helped me set up the patio table. Uncle Greg brought his usual awkward dad jokes. My mom fluttered between rooms like a bird with too many nests, and my dad sat quietly on the edge of the couch cradling a glass of lemonade and watching everyone like he was somewhere else entirely. And then there was Ivy, my cousin, the picture of elegance in a silk cocktail dress that didn't quite match the rustic warmth of the gathering. She kissed my cheek like always and handed me a gift bag wrapped in gold foil. "Open it later," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "You look radiant, Olivia," my mom said, brushing a stray curl from my face. "I hope you know how proud we are." I smiled. "Thank you, Mom." But the flicker of doubt returned. Why do I feel like something's off? I glanced around the room, taking it all in. The wooden beams overhead, the laughter, the scent of lavender from the backyard drifting in through the open windows. This was home. My sanctuary. Nothing could take that away, right? "Liv, are you okay?" Daniel's voice pulled me back. "You've been staring off for a while." I shook my head and gave him a quick smile. "Yeah, just taking it all in." He nodded slowly, but the concern in his eyes didn't fade. And still, that strange knot in my stomach tightened just a little more. The moment my mother handed me the silver-wrapped envelope, I felt it. The shift. The quiet before a storm I never saw coming. "Open this one now," she said, her voice too careful. "It's special." I smiled at her, but inside, one thought echoed like a drumbeat. Why does this feel like goodbye? I took the envelope from her hands, the silver wrapping crinkling softly under my fingers. It was tied with a small red ribbon, like the kind my mom used to put in my hair when I was 5. She smiled at me as she handed it over, but her hands trembled, slightly, like she was holding a secret too heavy for her to carry any longer. "Open it now, Liv," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "It's really special." Everyone had gone quiet. I could still smell the frosting from the vanilla cake, still feel the warmth of Daniel's hand on my shoulder just moments ago. But suddenly, it all felt dimmed, muted, like I was watching the scene through a fogged window. I untied the ribbon slowly, carefully, as if unwrapping something fragile. The foil slid off with a soft sigh. Inside was a stack of papers. I glanced at the top one and felt my breath catch in my throat. Eviction notice. 2 words, bold and cold, in ink too dark to feel real. I blinked. Once, twice. My hand stopped midair, frozen as if my body hadn't caught up with what my eyes were seeing. The room closed in around me. The laughter gone, the colors blurring. What "What is this?" I asked, my voice smaller than I had intended. Thin. Cracked. A child's voice lost in a grown woman's throat. My father wouldn't look at me. His hands were clasped in his lap, his head bowed as if in shame. My mother stepped back slightly. She opened her mouth like she was about to say something, then didn't. "Daniel." I turned to him. He took a small step back, his mouth pressed into a thin line. "And Ivy?" Ivy smiled. But it wasn't the warm, teasing grin I had known since childhood. It was tight, controlled, the smile of someone who had planned for this moment, waited for. "Olivia," my mom began. Her voice was shaking. "We know this isn't the ideal time, but it's time we were honest." I stood up too quickly, the chair scraping against the wooden floor like a scream. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice rising. "This is my house." I pointed to the walls, to the beams, to the kitchen I had tiled with my own 2 hands. My throat felt raw. "I rebuilt this place. I bled for it. How can you?" Ivy set her wine glass down with a soft clink. She rose, smoothing out her silk dress as if she were about to deliver a business pitch. "But legally," she said lightly, "the house is still under your aunt and uncle's name, Olivia. On paper, it's not yours." I turned to her, feeling something inside me collapse. "You knew?" She nodded, unapologetically. "I'm just helping the family make a smart decision. This neighborhood's hot right now. It makes sense to sell." Sell. The word echoed in my head like a gunshot in a cathedral. "So this is it?" I asked no one in particular. "The birthday present you all prepared? An eviction notice and a real estate deal?" Still, my father said nothing. My mother reached toward me, eyes glossy. "You have 45 days to get things in order," she said, like it was a kindness. "We'll help with moving costs if you need." I pulled my hand away like she had struck me. "I don't need your money," I snapped. "I need the truth." My eyes scanned the room, desperate for answers. For someone to stand up and say this was all some cruel misunderstanding. No one did. The silence was unbearable. And then, only one thought surfaced in my mind, sharp and clean like broken glass. They knew. All of them. And none of them stopped it. That night, after the last door closed and their footsteps faded down the brick path, I stood alone in the quiet house. The eviction notice lay on the coffee table like a wound still bleeding. The room was dark, lit only by the soft golden glow of the table lamp. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. I should have cried. I should have screamed, but the only thing I felt was suspicion. Why Ivy? Why now? I sat down in the armchair by the window, pulling my knees to my chest. The scent of lavender from the garden wafted in through the open window, mixing with the scent of betrayal. Something deeper than anger stirred inside me. This wasn't just a family betrayal, this was a plan, deliberate, calculated, and Ivy was at the center of it. I picked up my phone, my fingers dialing almost instinctively. 1 ring. 2. "Olivia?" It was Emma, my best friend from college, the one who had stayed through every mess I'd ever made, every wall I'd knocked down, literally and metaphorically. "I need you," I said, my voice flat. "Bring your laptop, and that folder, the one with all the old renovation permits." "On my way," she said without hesitation. 45 minutes later, she stood in my doorway, her hair in a loose ponytail, a laptop bag slung over her shoulder. She took one look at my face and didn't ask a thing. Just walked in, hugged me, and got to work. We spread papers across the dining table, blueprints, approval forms, emails from the city's planning office. Emma's organizational skills hadn't dulled a bit. Within the hour, she found everything we needed. Every permit, every inspection, all legit, she said, flipping her screen toward me. "You dotted every I, Liv." I leaned closer, staring at the files. Ivy had told my family I didn't have permits, that I was breaking code. She lied, and they believed her. I clenched my jaw. She showed them documents, false ones probably. Emma frowned. Could be forged, but forged how? From who? There was only one way to find out. I texted Daniel. We hadn't spoken since the blowout, but he was still my brother. Still someone I hoped hadn't lost all his sense. "Me, I need to see you, urgent, please. Just you and me." "Daniel, tomorrow morning. Cornerstone Cafe, 8 a.m. I barely slept. My mind spun with blueprints and betrayal. Morning came heavy and gray. I arrived early, clutching a folder of verified permits like armor. When Daniel walked in, he looked like he hadn't slept either. I didn't wait. "You knew about the eviction." He exhaled, slowly. "Yeah, about 2 weeks ago. Ivy told Mom and Dad you were doing unapproved renovations, that there could be legal trouble." I slid the folder toward him. Every single document. Verified. Permitted. She lied, Daniel. He flipped through the pages, his face went pale. I believed her, he muttered. God, Liv, I'm sorry. I leaned in, lowering my voice. There's more. I think she's working with someone, a developer. Daniel's brows furrowed. Max Harper? I nodded slowly. That's him, isn't it? He nodded back. He's into real estate. Dad mentioned his name. Big projects, big money. I leaned back in my chair, my voice was steady now. She's not just taking my house. She's preparing to demolish it. Daniel stared at me. His silence told me he believed it now. I'm gonna dig deeper, I said. But I need your help. If we expose what she's done, she won't get away with it. He looked down, then back at me. I'm with you. That night, back in the house that still smelled like birthday cake and betrayal, Emma and I built our battle plan. We had permits, we had facts, but we needed proof, legal proof of what Ivy had forged. Let's start with the city records, Emma said, already opening her laptop. And if anything's off, we'll find it. I nodded, the fire inside me no longer fear, but focus. If Ivy thought I'd go quietly, she didn't know me at all. It was late afternoon when we met Chloe, Emma's old college classmate, at the public library. Chloe now worked at the city's land records office, and after a few calls and one strong coffee, she agreed to help us off the record. She met us at the end of a quiet row of reading tables, her eyes scanning the room before she spoke. This, she said, opening a thick file, is the petition your cousin submitted about unpermitted renovations and neighborhood complaints. It's what the eviction was based on. I leaned over the pages. Emma hovered beside me. But something felt off. There's no official stamp, I said quietly, no case number. Chloe nodded, her expression darkening, because there's no official complaint in the system. This is a copy, but the original doesn't exist. Emma leaned closer. The person listed as the complainant, Thomas V. Rhodes, do you know him? Chloe shook her head. I checked the Willow Street resident registry. No one by that name has lived there in the last 20 years. A slow chill worked its way down my spine. Fake name, fake complaint, fake cause for eviction. Emma snapped photos of every page. This is it, Liv. This is how she twisted it all. But there was more. Back at home we dug deeper, connecting Ivy not just to the paperwork but to intent. We searched for development permits tied to Willow Street, and then Emma found it, a project proposal filed under a company called Harper and Stone Group. The document header sent a jolt through my chest. Proposed development, Willow Heights condominiums, location, 197 Willow Street. My address, my home. Ivy's not just trying to evict you, Emma whispered. She's clearing the land to build this. The next day Daniel arranged for us to meet one of his contacts, Marcus Bell, a city planner who occasionally reviewed project proposals. He agreed to meet at his office after hours. Marcus was quiet, professional, but his eyes narrowed the moment he saw the fake land survey and the forged permit document. I've seen this version, he said slowly, pointing at the proposed development plan. It was reviewed in a closed-door presentation 2 weeks ago. The developer, Max Harper. Emma and I exchanged a glance. And the signatures, I asked. Marcus typed something into his computer and turned the screen toward us. There it was. A land survey approval form with signatures from my parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rickman. Only, my parents never mentioned signing anything. These could be copies, Marcus said, frowning. I'll send them to our legal department. If the signatures don't match, it's forgery. Please, I said, and fast. They're trying to bulldoze my house before the truth gets out. That night, Emma stayed over. The house felt cold, empty. The walls, once filled with joy, now held only strategy. Evidence, quiet fury. We sat by the fireplace, documents spread across the floor like puzzle pieces. One line caught Emma's eye on the survey form, notarized by Elizabeth Sterling. Wait, Emma said. Sterling, that's Ivy's last name. I froze. Elizabeth Sterling, that's her mother, I whispered. She used to be a notary, but she retired almost 2 years ago. Emma tapped quickly on her laptop. Found it. Official retirement date, August 7th. I stared at the stamp on the survey. Date of notarization? October 3rd. Almost 2 months after Elizabeth Sterling stopped being licensed. That's illegal, I said, my voice shaking. She used her mother's name to fake legal documents. Emma's voice was cold now. This isn't just a betrayal anymore, it's criminal fraud. 3 days after the rock shattered my windshield, an email from Marcus landed in my inbox. The subject line was only 5 words, but my hands trembled as I clicked it. Signature verification. Results confirmed. I read it once. Then twice. The words lit up like sirens in my mind. After comparing the signatures submitted on the land survey with the original tax and ownership documents for the Rickman property, we conclude the signature on the proposed development file is forged. I closed my laptop and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. It was real. This was the first undeniable proof that Ivy had crossed a legal line, and she hadn't crossed it alone. Emma called just minutes later. "It's starting, Liv," she said. Her voice was tight but excited. "This is how we take her down." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Yes," I whispered, "but we have to be smart. We're not just fighting back anymore, we're exposing everything." That evening, Daniel came by. He brought a pizza and a folder of his own. "I talked to Dad," he said, setting the box down. I didn't tell him everything, but I asked about the survey forms. He looked confused, said he never signed anything. Neither did Mom. "So she forged them too," I murmured. "Yeah, and get this," Daniel continued, his face dark. "When I asked about Ivy borrowing the house key, Mom said she told her it was for me. Something about planning a surprise renovation." My stomach sank. "She's been inside," I said slowly. "Taking photos, maybe planting things." Daniel nodded grimly. "We have to move faster." Later that night, as Emma and I sat going over the photos of the forged documents again, the doorbell rang. I froze. It was almost 10 p.m. I opened the door cautiously. No one was there. The next morning, as I stepped outside, I saw my windshield, shattered. A rock lay on the driver's seat, a piece of torn paper wrapped around it, with a message scribbled in messy ink. "Back off while you still can." My heart pounded. I scanned the street, but no one was there. No movement. Just silence. I called the police, filed a report, installed cameras that very afternoon. And then I sat at my kitchen table, alone, staring at the storm they'd tried to bring down on me. They thought fear would silence me. They thought I'd crumble under the weight of their lies, but all they did was prove one thing. I was getting close. Closer than they ever expected. 3 days after the rock shattered my windshield, an email from Marcus landed in my inbox. The subject line was only 5 words, but my hands trembled as I clicked it. Signature verification. Results confirmed. I read it once, then twice. The words lit up like sirens in my mind. After comparing the signatures submitted on the land survey with the original tax and ownership documents for the Rickman property, we conclude the signature on the proposed development file is forged. I closed my laptop and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. It was real. This was the first undeniable proof that Ivy had crossed a legal line, and she hadn't crossed it alone. Emma called just minutes later. "It's starting, Liv," she said. Her voice was tight but excited. "This is how we take her down." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Yes," I whispered. "But we have to be smart. We're not just fighting back anymore. We're exposing everything." That evening, Daniel came by. He brought a pizza and a folder of his own. "I talked to Dad," he said, setting the box down. I didn't tell him everything, but I asked about the survey forms. He looked confused, said he never signed anything. Neither did Mom. "So she forged them too," I murmured. "Yeah, and get this," Daniel continued, his face dark. "When I asked about Ivy borrowing the house key, Mom said she told her it was for me. Something about planning a surprise renovation." My stomach sank. "She's been inside," I said slowly, "taking photos, maybe planting things." Daniel nodded grimly. "We have to move faster." Later that night, as Emma and I sat going over the photos of the forged documents again, the doorbell rang. I froze. It was almost 10 p.m. I opened the door cautiously. No one was there, but at my feet sat a cardboard box. Unmarked, no label, no note. I carried it inside slowly, my heart racing. Inside were full-color photographs. My photographs. Every room of my home. The kitchen, the staircase, the bathroom mirror. Even the closet where I kept my grandmother's wedding veil wrapped in silk. Each photo was marked with a large red X. I dropped the box. Emma rushed over. "What the hell?" "They've been watching," I whispered, my voice hollow. "Inside the house, inside my house." Her eyes flashed. "We need to call someone, police, a lawyer, anyone." "No," I said, breathing hard. "We need to hit back, louder." The next morning I met Sarah Holden, my lawyer. I hadn't called her in years, but now she was the only one I trusted to help me navigate this war. She sat across from me in her office, flipping through everything: permits, fakes, signatures, photos. "This is bigger than a family dispute," she said plainly. "This is a coordinated scheme to defraud, falsify records, and profit illegally from property development. If we file now, we can freeze the demolition permit." I nodded. "Do it." She paused. "Liv, if you go forward, this will get messy. This is public court, real charges, real consequences. It could destroy Ivy's name." I looked her in the eye. She destroyed more than just her name the day she came after my home. Later that week, while Emma drafted our timeline of evidence and Sarah filed a cease and desist order against Harper and Stone, I got a message. Not an email, not a letter, just a plain white text. "Stop now if you don't want things to get worse. There are things you can't control, Olivia." No name, no sender. I stared at it for a long time, not with fear, but with clarity. They were scared. That night, I sat on the floor of my living room, my hands resting on the wooden planks I had laid one by one years ago. I thought of all the nights I cried here after my divorce, all the mornings I made coffee with no makeup and no plans, all the times I danced alone in the kitchen because I was finally home, and I made a decision. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to reveal everything. No more whispers, no more private battles. Ivy wanted her moment of glory in front of family, investors, press. Then I'd give her one, but not the one she expected. The plan had been forming slowly in my head, quietly, methodically. But to pull it off, I needed more than evidence and resolve. I needed something they didn't see coming. And then she appeared. Not with a knock on my door, not in a courtroom, but through a message left in my mailbox. Handwritten, unsigned, folded in a plain envelope. "Olivia, I know what Ivy's done. Meet me. Bean and Birch Cafe, 5 p.m. I read it 3 times. The handwriting was familiar, neat, slanted slightly to the right. I hadn't seen it in years, but I remembered. Lena Harper, Max's younger sister, the one who always stood on the sidelines of their glittering family functions, quiet, overlooked, forgotten. I didn't reply. I just showed up. The cafe was mostly empty when I walked in. Lena sat near the back, her coat draped over the chair beside her, eyes down, fingers tapping a closed laptop like it was holding something alive inside. When she saw me, she stood. Nervous, but firm. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. I sat down, slow and cautious. "Why now?" She didn't speak right away, just reached into her bag and pulled out a small black USB. "This," she said, sliding it across the table, "contains everything I could get. Emails between Max and Ivy, timelines, blueprints, meeting notes with Harper and Stone's board." I blinked. "You're giving this to me?" Lena nodded. "Because I watched them lie. Over and over. I thought Max still had a conscience, but he's not who I thought he was. And Ivy." She paused, jaw tightening. "She doesn't care who she destroys as long as she gets the spotlight." I stared at the USB for a long time. "Why now, Lena?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "Because the party's this weekend. Ivy's calling it her official engagement debut. She's invited investors, media, family, politicians, everyone. And she's going to announce the Willow Heights development as her first signature project." My stomach turned. "She's using my house to make her name." Lena nodded once. "And I want you to stop her." That night, back at home, I plugged the USB into Emma's laptop. We scrolled through the folders like archaeologists uncovering ancient ruins of betrayal. Blueprints stamped months before the eviction, emails confirming Ivy's strategy to discredit me to my own family, meeting notes between Ivy and city officials where my name was never mentioned because she planned to erase me. And then the last file. An audio clip. Emma clicked play. Ivy's voice rang out, crystal clear and ice cold. "Let them think Olivia's breaking the law. Once the house loses legal protection, we can buy it for next to nothing. After the engagement party, everything's in our hands." Then came Max's voice, lower but unmistakable. "I've already cleaned the records. No one can trace it back to us." Emma looked up, jaw clenched. "This isn't just strategy, this is criminal." I sat there for a long time, staring at the flickering cursor on the screen. "They planned it all, like I was never supposed to matter," I whispered. "But you do," Emma said softly, "and now, they're the ones who don't see what's coming." The next morning I met Sarah at her office again. I laid out the entire plan. "The party is our moment," I said. "I want to reveal everything there, in front of everyone." Sarah didn't blink, she just nodded. I'll prepare a legal brief. You'll need backup copies of everything. Physical, digital, notarized, just in case. She slid a blank USB across the table. I'll also send a copy to the media's legal desk, quietly. If anything happens to you, this doesn't disappear. I tucked the USB into my coat. I don't want revenge, I said quietly. I want clarity. I want to take back what they tried to erase. Sarah gave me a long look. Then let's make it impossible for them to hide. That night, as I folded the dress I would black, simple, clean lines, I paused by the window. The garden was still. The wind soft. The light from the porch spilled across the brick path like a memory I hadn't yet lost. This house had seen everything. My healing, my heartbreak, my rebuilding. Now it would see me rise. Not as a victim, not as someone betrayed, but as someone ready. Ready to bring everything to light. Ready to turn their spotlight against them. The Bellevue Grand Hotel glittered like a palace. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, waiters in white gloves gliding through the crowd with champagne flutes held high. Every inch of the ballroom had been decorated to perfection. Golden drapes, ivory roses, a string quartet humming softly in the background. I stepped through the main doors slowly, feeling every pair of eyes flick toward me. Ivy had made sure I wasn't on the guest list. But Lena had made sure I had an invitation anyway. I clutched it in my hand, like a shield as I walked past the host. He barely glanced at it before nodding me through. Inside, the air was thick with expensive perfume and polite smiles. I spotted Ivy immediately, center of attention in a gown of shimmering white, her hand laced through Max's arm. She laughed at something Randall Morris, a well-known investor, had just said. Her laugh was sharp, rehearsed, empty. Then she saw me. Her smile froze for a half second. A flicker of panic danced across her face, then she masked it. "Olivia," she said, walking toward me, heels clicking confidently across the marble. "What a surprise!" I met her gaze without flinching. I wouldn't miss it, her eyes narrowed. "This is a private celebration." I pulled the engraved invitation from my purse and held it up. "Looks pretty official to me." Before she could answer, I stepped past her, into the center of the ballroom, into the heart of her curated dream. I tapped a wineglass gently with my ring. It rang out, crisp and clear. The music faded. Conversations halted. "If I may," I said, my voice even measured. "Just a moment before dinner begins." All eyes turned to me. Dozens of them, investors, family members, press, including my parents who had just arrived and now sat frozen in their seats. "This isn't a toast," I continued. "It's a truth. One that's been hidden behind smiles, forged documents, and real estate deals that never asked for consent." I pulled out the USB that Sarah had given me. Behind me, Lena, already stationed near the presentation screen, slipped the drive into the projector port and dimmed the lights. The screen lit up. The first image, a blueprint. Willow Heights, luxury apartment complex, proposed site, 197 Willow Street. Gasps, murmurs, several people leaned forward in their seats. "That," I said, "is my home, the house I rebuilt with my own hands, the house Ivy Sterling tried to erase from the city map." Next, documents. The land survey, the permit application, my parents' signatures. Every one of these, I said, was forged. Another image flashed up, the notary stamp of Elizabeth Sterling. My cousin used her mother's credentials, despite the fact she retired almost 2 years ago, to authorize these papers illegally. A man stood up near the front. Randall Morris, the major investor. "Are you saying these documents are criminally falsified?" I nodded. "Verified by the city planning office, the notary department, and an independent legal review." Then came the final piece, the audio. Ivy's voice filled the room. Confident. Unaware she'd ever be heard this way. "Let them think Olivia's breaking the law. Once the house loses legal protection, we can buy it for next to nothing." Max's voice followed. "I've already cleaned the records. No one can trace it back to us." The silence that followed was suffocating. I looked at Ivy, whose face had gone pale. Max gripped her arm as if she might collapse. "Ivy," a woman near the back whispered, "is this true?" Before she could answer, a voice rang out, sharp and cutting. "Ivy never cared who she hurt," Lena said, stepping forward. "She thought no one would ever speak up." Ivy spun toward her. You gave her this?" Lena met her gaze without fear. "You buried our family in lies. I just dug them back up." 2 plainclothes officers entered the room, walking calmly but directly toward Ivy and Max. "Miss Ivy Sterling," one said. You are under investigation for conspiracy to commit fraud and falsification of legal documents. We ask that you come with us for further questioning. Ivy looked at me one last time. Not with fire, with disbelief. You'll regret this, Olivia. I stared back, my voice steady. The only thing I regret is ever trusting you. The ballroom slowly unraveled. Investors whispered in tight circles. Reporters took quiet photos. My mother sat trembling beside my father, who still hadn't blinked. I stepped over to them, my voice softer now. I had to do it this way. I'm sorry if it hurt. My mother took my hand. Ivy lied to all of us. I know, I said, but I needed you to see it. Outside, the night air wrapped around me like something finally clean. I stood on the hotel steps, Sarah beside me, her briefcase in hand. The media already picked it up, she said, and the case is strong. You'll win. Lena walked out moments later, shoulders lifted like she could finally breathe. You did it, she said quietly. No, I answered. We did. And as I looked up at the stars peeking through the city haze, one truth burned brighter than the rest. I hadn't just taken back my house, I had taken back my voice.